Yo, what's going on everybody? Today's video is going to be on a ZDPS support witch doctor for group XP runs and for pushing group GRIFTs in patch 2.4. Now the current group meta is 3 ZDPS and 1 DPS character. The DPS is a energy twister wizard running power hungry and Reaper's wraps, so they're very reliant on tons of health globes being spawned and then them getting picked up to fuel the arcane power and DPS. Then you've got a ZDPS support barb and a ZDPS support monk, and their jobs are to spawn the health globes and then also group enemies together for the team. Then you've got the ZDPS witch doctor, and in my opinion the number one goal for the witch doctor is to pick up those health globes, and witch doctor is ideal for that because of the thing of the deep offhand, giving 20 pickup radius right off the bat. I'd recommend another 6 to 10 pickup radius as secondary rolls on the rest of your gear. That way you're able to just barely move to pick up globes from really far away. Now keep in mind there's some talks about a support demon hunter potentially replacing the witch doctor in the group meta. I don't see the witch doctor getting completely replaced. I don't think the DH is good enough to do that from what I've seen, but it needs to be tested more, and maybe it will. You just never know. The group meta shifts quite a bit during the seasons. But if anything, I think the two, Witch Doctor and DH, will be interchangeable with one another, even if one tends to be better than the other. Let's get right into the abilities. First up, Haunt, Poison Spirit. Haunted enemies take 20% more damage from all sources. You're going to be pretty much spamming this whenever you're not casting any of your cooldown abilities. It's going to reduce the cooldown of your cooldown abilities with Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. It's also going to enable Bad Medicine, reducing damage taken by 25%, and then the build runs Rush of Essence, which this will proc to make sure that you're above 90 to 95% resource for the Aquila Cuirass chest piece. Next up, Big Bad Voodoo Slam Dance for 20% more attack speed and then 30% more damage. The attack speed's really good for the wizard and for the barb, because the barb is spamming Hoda to spawn health globes, so the more attack speed for that as well, the better. Now you could also run Big Bad Voodoo Ghost Trance to reduce damage taken by 20%, and then also to increase the healing of the group a bit. Mass Confusion Paranoia. This charms enemies, but it's really there for the secondary effect. All enemies in the area of Mass Confusion take 30% additional damage for 12 seconds. And with all the cooldown reduction we're going to run in the build, and the Last Breath Ceremonial Knife also reducing the cooldown even more, you're able to cast this very frequently. Next up, Piranhas, Frozen Piranhas, and the biggest reason for this rune is because of the legendary gem Ice Blink, giving your group 10% increased crit chance against enemies you've chilled. Then you also get 15% increased damage to affected enemies from the Piranhas. And the Ice Blink is really big in this build because, for one thing, the wizard's getting more damage. They're also potentially running arcane power on crit, so they're getting more arcane power that way. And then also, your other two ZDPS are running Selenium in the cube, getting health globes off of crits, and it also gives more crit chance for the Hammer of the Ancients for the Barbarian. Now, other options would be Paranado if you're running in a group that doesn't have the optimal setup. You could also run Wave of Mutilation for a potential Strong Arm Bracers proc. Now, from what I've seen, both Paranado and Wave of Mutilation potentially have issues with screwing up the pooling for the monk and the barb, so I would not recommend going that route. Instead, running Piranhas, Frozen Piranhas, and Nemesis Bracers over Wave of Mutilation and Strong Arms. Hex Jinx. You summon a Fetish Shaman for 12 seconds, and hexed enemies are unable to perform offensive actions and take 30% additional damage. Now keep in mind that the enemies only take the additional damage while they're hexed. And with CC the way it is these days, it's not going to be all that often. But with that said, there's not a whole lot of other good options to run in this spot. Another potential damage boost would be Summon Zombie Dogs Chilled to the Bone. But as you've probably already noticed, this is a petless build. The majority of groups want a Witch Doctor without pets these days, because the pets have the potential to really screw up the grouping and block enemies and potentially slow down the runs because of it. So most Witch Doctors aren't even running Belt of Transcendence and Star Metal at this point, instead relying on Leoric's Crown, Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, and a lot of CDR to reduce the cooldown of Big Bad Voodoo. Now, Hex gets a little bit better if you're running 4-piece Arakir, which my current setup I'm not, but I've messed around with just about every variation you can go with for the ZDPS Witch Doctor this season, and one of them is running 4-piece Arakir, giving you the Toad of Hugeness rune, and whenever the Toad spits out the enemy, that enemy takes 25% additional damage as well, so that makes Hex a little bit better. Next up, Locust Swarm Cloud of Insects. Now, I'm not running Spirit Walk at the moment. If you run Illusory Boots, you really don't need Spirit Walk. I've had no issues keeping up with my group not running it so far. Now, with that said, you can absolutely run Spirit Walk in this slot, probably with the Severance rune for 100% more movement speed, but it's really not necessary. I've been running a lot of speeds lately, and have had no problems keeping up with all the other teammates. So I like Locust Swarm Cloud of Insects in this spot. Enemies affected deal 25% reduced damage. This is especially great if you're running with a maybe under-geared wizard to make sure that you keep them alive. As for the passives, Tribal Rites reduce the cooldowns of the following skills by 25%. And in this build, it's going to affect Hex, Big Bad Voodoo, and Mass Confusion. Next up, Rush of Essence. Spirit spells return 100 mana over 10 seconds. And this is mostly coming from the Haunt spam in this build. Like I said before, you're pretty much just spamming Haunt all the time whenever you're not casting one of your cooldown abilities. Now again, if you're not running the Aquila Cuirass, you probably really don't need Rush of Essence, and you can opt for something else. Spirit Vessel for a second life. This isn't mandatory to the build, but the higher you push, the more likely it is that you may die to something, so I would definitely recommend running it, especially when you're doing, really fast speed runs. There's potential for screw-ups, and I think this is a little bit better than running maybe another defensive passive like Jungle Fortitude or something like that. Bad Medicine. When you deal poison damage to an enemy, its damage is reduced by 25% for 5 seconds. So it makes it really important that you're spamming Haunt constantly, because that is the main thing that is proccing Bad Medicine for your group. And then we're running a 5th passive with the Hellfire Amulet, Swampland Attunement. You and your pets gain 120 physical, poison, fire, and cold res for every enemy within 20 yards. And this range is affected and increased by your gold pickup radius. And you have really crazy gold pickup radius in this build, so pretty much everything within, 50 yards or so is going to give you a toughness increase. Next up, let's take a look at the gear. Now this is currently my favorite version of the build, but we'll go over some potential options as far as gearing differences and things like that. Now as far as what stats to prioritize, you really want CDR, especially because you're not running the SMK and Belt of Transcendence like I said, so you want to stack a ton of CDR. Currently I'm sitting at 61% before Gogok or anything even comes into play. And I have really high uptime on Big Bad Voodoo even at that cooldown reduction point. But that's rolling it on just about everything that you can get it on. And then you want to prioritize toughness, because obviously you don't want to be dying. And then again, the pickup radius, which you're getting the majority of with Thing of the Deep, but right there. But you still want to get another 6 to 10 or so if you can. So as far as the weapon slots, we've got the Last Breath, reduces the cooldown of Mass Confusion by 20 seconds. And again, you want the cooldown reduction roll for sure, and then go defensive stats after that. And then we got a Gem of Ease in there, because why not? Then we got the Storm Shield, giving you just tons of toughness, again with a CDR roll. And then we're running Thing of the Deep in the cube for the 20 pickup radius. Alternative gearing options for the weapons would be to run Thing of the Deep on your character, and then you can potentially cube something like an Engiom if you're running really fast speeds to get some CDR there. But I think this is currently the best setup. You could also run something like a Thunder Fury in the cube, and you can also still run the Star Metal Kukri if you really want to and your group doesn't mind, along with the Belt of Transcendence on your character to proc it. At that point, you can either cube the SMK and run the Last Breath, or vice versa. As far as the armor slots, we're running 3-piece Helltooth with a Ring of Royal Grandeur in the cube to get the 4-piece bonus. Now whatever you do, you always want to run 2-piece Helltooth because you're getting a 20% damage increase, but the 4-set also gives you 50% reduced damage for 10 seconds to your own character after you apply Necrosis. And also, Helltooth 4-piece is really easy to fit into the build. As far as the actual stats on the Helltooth pieces, you want defensive stats, vitality, life percentage, armor, and then on the Helltooth mantle, you want a cooldown reduction roll as well. On the gloves, again, defensive stats, and you want to make sure you get that cooldown reduction roll. And then on the pants, vitality, armor, 2 sockets. Currently, I'm running all res gems. You could also run vitality gems if you really wanted to. And then we're running illusory boots, allow you to move through enemies unhindered. And I think these are pretty mandatory to the build for the most part. I wouldn't want to run without them, and this allows you to not run Spirit Walk on your bar. But there is another potential build that runs 4-piece Helltooth and 4-piece Arakir, so you'd run the helmet, pants, and boots, and then also get that 4-piece bonus, giving you another 50% damage reduction and 10% healing over 15 seconds, which is pretty good, but I think getting the illusory boots is a little bit better. And by not running the 4-piece Arakir, it also allows you to run both Grim Reaper here and the Leoric's Crown. Leoric's Crown giving you 100% extra effect to your helmet gem, which is a CDR gem there, which is a pretty crazy increase to your cooldown reduction. And then also running the Grim Reaper, which the mimics will cast your damage buffs as well. And I think this setup is especially good, getting to run both the Grim Reaper and the Leoric's Crown. The Leoric's Crown, when you're not running Star Metal Kukri, really helps with the cooldown on Big Bad Voodoo. As far as stats on the Grim Reaper, int, vit, life percentage, and a socket. And then you're also able to run the Aquila Cuirass. While above 94% primary resource, all damage is reduced by 50%. So you're also getting a 50% damage reduction as long as you're running the Rush of Essence passive along with this. Another potential thing you could do is run the Gruesome Feast passive with how many health globes are spawning, but there's potential on the bosses to dip below the 90 to 95% primary resource. And again here, stats wise, intelligence, vitality, life percentage, or an armor roll. And then we've got the String of Ears, int, vitality, life percentage, armor, and this also reduces damage from melee attacks by 27%. The only other real option for the belt would be again the Belt of Transcendence if you're running the Star Metal. For bracers, the Nemesis bracers, I've got a strength, vitality, armor, and life per hit roll on these. Shrines and pylons will spawn an enemy champion. These are especially good for speed runs, getting that extra champion to get more progress. And again, if you are running Wave of Mutilation or Paranado, both of those will proc strong arm bracers. So that is another potential option in the bracer slot, but I wouldn't recommend running either of those abilities. Next up we have the jewelry slots, and for the rings, we get the Oculus ring with vitality, life percentage, and CDR, and a socket, and then the legendary effect creates an area of focused power on killing a monster, and then damage is increased by 85% while standing in the area. And then the Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, like we've already talked about, with attack speed, crit chance, and CDR. Now the crit chance you'd much rather have be some kind of defensive stat, and then a socket on that as well. And this reduces the remaining cooldown of one of your skills by 1 second when you hit with a resource spending attack. And that's going to be Poison Spirit Haunt in this build. For the amulet, Hellfire Amulet, ours has the Swampland Attunement passive. Stats, int, vit, and CDR. Also wouldn't mind having another defensive stat over the intelligence. As far as other amulet options, you could go with any amulet that prevents a type of damage. I personally like the Zephyrian Amulet, preventing lightning damage. You could also go with the one that prevents fire or arcane. I think those are probably the 3 best ones. And you've also got the S of Johan with the chance on hit to pull enemies towards your target. If you're running particularly in a group that may not have as much pulling, like maybe you're not running the exact current best meta with a monk, then you may want to run the S of Johan. As far as legendary gems, we've got the Esoteric Alteration, just giving you a ridiculous amount of all res. The Gogok of Swiftness, which gives you cooldown reduction and attack speed. And then the Ice Blink, which again gives you and the entire group that extra 10% increased chance to crit. Now, there are some other options for gems. You could run Moratorium for more defense. You could run Mutilation Guard, Molten Wildebeest Gizzard for more defense as well. You could potentially run a rank 25 Gem of Efficacious Toxin for 10% more damage to the group, but that's just 10% more additive damage, and it also is another dot on top of all the other dots, which potentially will bring more lag the higher you push. If you're pushing into the 90s, less dots, the better. Next up, the Paragon points. Get as much movement speed as you need, and then go Vitality. Offense-wise, cooldown reduction first, then attack speed, and then crit chance and crit damage don't really matter. Defense-wise, you can either start with life percentage or armor percentage, then go all resist, and then life regen. For utility, you're not dealing any damage anyways, really, so there's no point in having area damage spec'd into, because there's potential for it to create a little bit more lag. So just go life on hit, then resource cost reduction, and then gold find. If you're not running the Rush of Essence passive, you can go resource cost reduction first, then life on hit. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope it helps some of you. It's good to know the correct spec for ZDPS Witch Doctor, because it's really the only spec for Witch Doctor that you can run in group XP runs at this point in the season. That meta may change at some point, but for now, if you want to run Witch Doctor, this is the spec to go. So anyways, thanks again everybody for watching. I do appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe as always. And if you have any questions that you would like to be answered live, come check out my Twitch stream. It's twitch.tv/J_MACC. Twitch.tv/JMac. And I'll go ahead and put a link to that in the info section of this video, along with a link to the Diablo fans page, which I'll have a written guide up soon. So thanks again, and I'll see you next time.